had a deal, so David had to let me pass. Brilliant.
Before there were prior rules, there was the controversial McLaren team orders of 1998 starting at the Australian Grand Prix. Now I call it team orders, but David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen call it a gentleman's agreement. Come see, come that. So during winter testing, it seemed to be that McLaren Mercedes were miles ahead of the rest of the grid and that they would be the team to beat for the 1998 season, which would turn out to be true. So the first race of the season on March 8, 1998 at Albert Park, McLaren were at the front of the grid, Mika Hakkinen on pole and DC locking in second position. They dominated this race. Mika Hakkinen had the better start and took the lead going into turn 1 while David Coulthard was fighting off an eager Schumacher, giving Hakkinen an advantage in the lead. Mika Hakkinen then led for the first 23 laps before making his first pit stop with David Coulthard right behind him. Now, the McLarens were so dominant this race that they actually ended up lapping everyone. So things were going seemingly well for Mika Hakkinen. He was comfortably in the lead up until lap 36 when he unexpectedly went to go pit again. This was so unexpected that McLaren wasn't ready for him, and he drove right through the pit back into the race, and it resulted in him losing out on the lead to his teammate, David Coulthard, who was on a charge of his own. After both McLarens had their second pit stops, it looked like David Coulthard was going to go on to take the win at Albert Park, which would have been back-to-back Australian Grand Prix wins for DC, but that was not to be the case, because towards the final laps of the race, Mika Hakkinen was catching up, and by lap 55, DC was only leading by 2 seconds. Mika put up a fight, even when the team warned him about overheating the brakes, and the pundits were so sure that the race would finish in a McLaren 1-2 with David Coulthard taking the lead, as no calls for team orders came in, and they didn't think that Mika would take any risks and make a bold move on his teammate. However, on the final corner of the final laps, out of nowhere, David slowed down, and Mika overtook him, resulting in him taking the win on lap 58. This came as a shock to everyone who was not in the McLaren camp, and it turns out that there was a pre-race agreement between the two teammates, which they came about due to reliability concerns, so they decided that the driver who led at the first corner would go on to win the race should they be in the position to do so. McLaren faced heavy criticism for this, and it brought upon a wider discussion about team orders and predetermined tactics, but we have to ask, what happened to Hakkinen on lap 36 that made him pit to begin with and lose out on his lead? Well, he says that he thought he heard something on the radio and he was confused, thinking they were asking him to come and change his tires, which resulted in him going in and driving through the pit lane, losing out on the lead. Ron Dennis believed that someone tapped into the McLaren team radio and instructed Mika to enter the pits. However, we will truly never know. I mean, overall, DC, while he did lose out on the win, he wasn't too upset because he made the deal as well, and he went on to say, "We as a team did it for a good reason. We had a fast car that had been unreliable in winter testing, so even if it was in the wrong order for my liking, it was a big success for the team." And there you have it, the McLaren team orders of 1998 at the Australian Grand Prix. Was this controversial to you? Was it not controversial? It's a little bit messy, I can't lie.